preceded by an asay, you get Makkos. So this needs a little bit of an introduction. We know from the days of our yeshiva that lav anitik asay, right? If you have a lav and then it says an asay after the lav, then you don't get Makkos on that lav. Why not? Because you have a way to correct the lav. We have a way to do tshuva. So what happens if the lav comes after the asay? The asay is before the lav. So Rabbi Yochanan says, on that you get Makkos. Now Rashi right away and Tosfos both say it doesn't mean that if you take a look inside the Torah, the order, the way the Torah wrote it, the order, the way it's written, that the asay comes before the lav. That's not what it means. It means that any time you could be mekayim the asay without the lav. The asay is not contingent on the lav. That's what it means. It means that the asay doesn't need the lav for its kiyum. I'll give you an example. Tosfos says, let's say v'heishav v'sagzela asher gazal. You can't be mekayim the mitzvah of v'heishav v'sagzela if you didn't steal. You have to steal. You have to violate the lav, and then you have an asay v'heishav v'sagzela. So there, it's a lav anitik asay, because the asay is contingent on the lav. That's lav anitik asay. That's where you don't get Makkos. But if you can be mekayim the asay without the lav, then you still get Makkos. Amru loi. Oh, shalom aleichem. Thank you so much. Welcome. We just literally started the bottom Daf Daled Amud Beis, the last line. Welcome. What's your name? Shalom aleichem. Yosef. Very nice to meet you. So glad to have you here.
I've seen you on a video somewhere.
Yeah? Okay, they sound better looking in real life. Is it true? No,
I'm taller in real life.
I'm tall. They do tell me I'm taller, you know that? It's true, that's what they say. So I'd rather be taller in real life than shorter, yeah. Okay, fine. But we just started this memra. On the bottom, literally the last line, Yudal Amud Beis. We start again. Omer Rabbo, Bar Bar Chana, Omer Rabbi Yochanan. Consider yourself hugged. Wow. Any time in the Torah you have an asay that precedes a loisese, we just mentioned, it doesn't mean that the asay comes before the lav. It means that the asay is not contingent on the lav. You can be mekayim the asay without violating the lav first. That's what it means. Loisese shekad me'asay, you get Makkos on it. Amru loi, so people who heard this memra from Rabbi Yochanan, Mamish first line Tezvav Amud Aleph, first line top. They said, Omarta? Did you really say it? Did you really say it, Rabbi Yochanan? Is that really what you said? Amru loi, I didn't say it. So what do you mean he didn't say it? So Rashi says, Chazer boy, he retracted. He said, I was chazer from this memra. Amar Rabba says, Hu Elohim, I swear. Amra, he did say it, and really, that's the halacha, that you're loikim, you get Makkos on a lav that is preceded by an asay. In other words, if you have an asay before a lav, doesn't mean before in the order that it's written again. It means that you can be mekayim the asay without violating the lav first, as opposed to, let me give you an example, right? We just gave it. Tosfos gives an example. You cannot be mekayim the mitzvah of a heishav v'sagzela, returning a stolen object, unless what? Unless you steal first, right? Can't be mekayim the mitzvah of tshuva unless you do an aveira first, right? So that would be called a lav hanitik asay. The lav is loisig zoil, and nitik asay means v'heishav v'sagzela. You got to return the gzela, right? So the asay fixes or washes away the lav. You don't get Makkos on that. If you steal, you don't get Makkos on stealing. Why not? Because you can always repair it by returning the gzela. That's a lav nitik asay. You don't get Makkos. But what if you have a lav shekadmoi asay? Lav shekadmoi asay means that the lav and the asay are independent. They're not contingent on each other. You can be mekayim the asay without violating the lav. So Rabbi Yochanan says that you get Makkos on. So they asked him afterwards, did you really say it? He says no. Which means, Rashi says, he was chayzer, he retracted. Rabbi says, I swear he said it, because Ksiva Tanina, it's a pasuk and it's a mishnah. Ksiva, where's the pasuk? Pasuk says, Vishalchu min hamachne kol tzerua v'chalzav v'chol tomei lenefesh. You have to leave the machne shchina if you become tomei. Can't be in the harabayis. V'lo yitamus machaneim, and then there's a lav that says, don't come into the machne shchina. Right? You can't come into the machne shchina. So here you have an asay before the lav. The asay is get sent away. You got to get sent away from maharabayis, and the lav is don't be matamad harabayis. And Tanina, we learned in the Mishnah, Habala Mikdash Tamei, somebody who comes into the Beis HaMikdash, Tamei, so there he gets Malchus. So even though you have a case of a Asay preceding the Lav, still the Mishnah says you get Malchus. So here you have a raya to Rabbi Yochanan's halacha that any time an Asay precedes the Lav, then you don't get Malchus on that Lav. That's what you have a raya. Because over here also, the Asay preceded the Lav. It says, you got to get sent out from the Harabayas if you're Tameh, and then it says the Lav, don't be Matami the Harabayas. So here you have an Asay, the order that it's written is the Asay preceded the Lav, and still you get Malchus. Now the obvious question is, 1 second, the Asay preceded the Lav maybe in the order, in the way it's written, but we just said, that's not what Lav Shekot Ma'aseh means. Lav Shekot Ma'aseh means when the Asay doesn't need the Lav. You could be Mekayim the Asay without violating the Lav first. Over here, you can't be Mekayim the Asay without violating the Lav first. This would be a Lav Anitik Asay, not a Lav Shekot Ma'aseh. Because you first need to be in the Harabayas, right, in order to be over on the Lav of a Lei Tamas Machleim, and then be Shalchem and only then can you be sent out. That's a typical case of a Lav Anitik Asay. So how can we say this is a case of Lav Shekot Ma'aseh? All the Achronim, everybody's busy with this question. How could you say that this is a case of Lav Shekot Ma'aseh if in technicality it won't work out because you need the Lav before you can be Mekayim Daseh? You have to have a Lav of a Le'itamu to be in Machna Shechina, to violate that Lav before you can fulfill the Aseh of Yishalchu, of getting sent away. So the Avnei Nezer here answers, I saw all the different terutzim. This teretz actually is relevant to Pesach, because Pesach, we have a Aseh. What's the Aseh by Chametz of Pesach? You can't have Chametz on Pesach, right? We know Lo Yirov, Lo Yimatzeh. That's the Aseh of Matzah. But there's an Aseh by Chametz. It's called Tashbisu. Right? Tashbisu, destroy the Chametz. Would you say that if somebody doesn't have Chametz to begin with, when Pesach comes in, can he still fulfill the Aseh of Tashbisu? Yes or no? So the Avnei Nezer, but are you fulfilling? How do you fulfill the mitzvah of Tashbisu once Chametz is Aser? But Tashbisu means you have to destroy Chametz as the 7th hour comes in when you're not. Tashbisu is not Erev Pesach. Tashbisu is Tashbisu on Pesach.
But you just claim any Chametz whether or not you're aware of it. So you can do so even if you're not.
When do you do that? You do that before Pesach? Before Pesach comes in, right? In the morning.
You have to do it.
So if you do before Pesach, so when Pesach comes in, you're already Chametz free. So could you fulfill the mitzvah of Tashbisu?
You don't have it.
When the Torah says Tashbisu, which is on Pesach? On Pesach it says Lo Yirov Lo Yimatzeh, right? So you come Pesach, okay, you won't see Chametz on my property. But the Aseh of Tashbisu is kind of tricky. Because Tashbisu is not said on Erev Pesach. Tashbisu is on Pesach. So how are you ever going to destroy Chametz on Pesach if by the time Pesach comes in you don't have Chametz? The Gebrak too. Very good. Well, what if you don't keep Gebrak? So which one is that? The Kitnias, the Svardim. Okay, so the Svardim are really in. So that's the Shaila. So the Avnei Nezer says, he brings from the Marik, that Tashbisu, coming in Chametz free in Pesach, that's the highest level of Tashbisu. You don't need to have Chametz on Pesach and go destroy it to fulfill Tashbisu. The fact that the Etzem you don't have it, you come into Pesach and you don't have the Chametz, that's the highest form of Tashbisu. So in other words, I don't need to violate a lav of Chametz and Pesach to be Mekayim Da'aseh of Tashbisu. I could just not have Chametz when Pesach comes in, and that is the fulfillment of Tashbisu.
So then
Says that.
Why do we do beer Chametz?
That's why, because Tashbis, to fulfill the mitzvah of Tashbisu, the highest level is come into Pesach Chametz free.
What we're saying right now, then you could just throw it out in your trash can, and then it's not yours.
But you don't want to wait till Pesach, because then if you wait till Pesach, you'll violate a law first, because you're not allowed to own Chametz on Pesach, and then you'll destroy it. Right? In other words, it's an asay which you can only fulfill if you violate a law first. That wouldn't make any sense. The Torah doesn't want you to do that.
Instead of beer, you could just throw it out. Why are we doing beer then?
Tashbisu means anything. Tashbisu means even throwing out. Tashbisu doesn't dafka mean.
What's the mitzvah of beer Chametz?
That is the mitzvah. The mitzvah is to get rid of Chametz. Pesach comes
Beer
in.
Chametz doesn't just mean burn Chametz, it could just be thrown out.
It means bittul, it means whatever. Get rid of the chametz, whatever chametz you have. It doesn't dafka mean. That's right. Yes. You're right. Right, we all flushed it down. Yeah, so that was a case of right. It doesn't need streifa. It doesn't dafka need streifa. That's what you're saying. That's the raya from this year. So the Avnei Nezer wants to say, just like the Marik says, you can have a kiyam mitzvah saseh tashbisu without actually violating a law of having chametz and then going to destroy it. Stam coming into Pesach without chametz, that's also tashbisu. Says over here also, vishalchum in amachna. Somebody who never came into Machna Shechina can also be Mekayim the mitzvah say Vishalchum and Amachna. It doesn't mean you have to first come in. It doesn't mean you have to first come into the Harabayas Tomei. Shalom Aleichem. Doesn't mean you have to come into the Harabayas Tomei first and then be sent away to fulfill the mitzvah Vishalchum and Amachna. Stam not coming into the Harabayas Tomei, that is also a kiyum mitzvah to say Vishalchum and Amachna. So it's not contingent on the lav, and that's why it's not a lav. I need to class A. Just like Tashbisu. What's the shtel to Tashbisu over here? What's the compared to Tashbisu? So here the Gemara says you have a case of lav shekod ma'aseh, which is an aseh that doesn't need the lav, and still you get malchus on the lav. So it's a raya to Rabbi Yochanan. So if you have a raya to Rabbi Yochanan's opinion, his first statement of Shalom Aleichem. So why is he chayzer? So the Gemara says the kashile einis. It's difficult, the din of Einis. What's the din of Einis? The Tanya. Einis Shagirish. Somebody who violates a Naira Basula, right? And the halacha is that he has to marry her. Very interesting mitzvah. I always struggled with this mitzvah. A person violates a girl and, forces her to be with him. All of a sudden, the Torah says, right, she probably, I don't know, who want to look at the guy, but you have to marry v'lo isia leisha leyuchel l'shalcha kol yamav. You can never divorce her. You have to, unless she doesn't want to.
Right.
Okay.
Because otherwise,
in other words, it's only for her benefit because she won't be able to find the shidduch.
Right.
Right.
You would.
Right. Yeah.
She wants to get
Yeah. It's very good. I know a girl in Lakewood. Something happened. A non-Jew. Violated her. Came to shidduchim, and people were, it's this is so the Torah says you have to marry her. So here the shaila is.
So remember back then, it was to have a husband meant to have a supporter.
Yeah.
The woman couldn't necessarily support themselves.
And today the women support themselves.
Today women work for their own, so it's a little different.
Right.
But back then,
roles have changed.
It was kind of like a protection to some extent.
Right. Exactly. So what happens if the guy divorces her? He marries her and divorces her. Right. So he's over on a lav. What's the lav? Lav says lo yuchel shachal kayamav. You can never divorce a woman. That woman that you violated, you have to stay married to her. So the Gemara says Im Yisrael who, if he's a Yisrael, he's not a kohen. If he's a kohen, he can't remarry her once he divorces her. Right? It's a lav. Kohen can't marry a grusha. If he's a Yisrael, so Allah is machzer ve'ein eloika. Then you could still remarry. And you don't get malchus. Why? Because you repaired the lav. You violated the lav of lo yuchel shalcha. Then you remarried her, so now you repaired it. V'lo isia leisha, so you repaired it. So lav and klase. Im koyenu, if he's a koyen, so now he's usher to marry divorcee, even if it's his own divorcee. Loika, then you get malchus. Ve'ena machzer, and he can't return. He can't remarry her because he's a koyen. So the Gemara says Im Yisrael machzer ve'ena loika. But you just said that if he's Yisrael, he remarries her, and he doesn't get malchus. Amai asks the Gemara, why not? Isn't this a case of a lois aseh, where the Torah wrote the aseh before the lois aseh, right? Because first it says v'loisia leisha, he should marry her, and then it says don't divorce her. And here in the case where he divorced her, you're telling me that he could still repair it by being mekayim the aseh, but the aseh was before the lav. The asay didn't need the lav, right? It was not contingent on the lav. As soon as you violated her, you had a mitzvah to marry her. And then you were over on the lav. Now you want to apply that asay for after the lav. L'chayr, that should be a case of malchus. Why doesn't he get malchus? Shalom aleichem, doctor. Omar Ula. So Ula says, so that's the kasha Rabbi Yochanan had on himself. Rabbi Yochanan wanted to say that a lav shekdomoy asay, a lav which had an asay come before the lav. In other words, the asay is not contingent on the lav. You can fulfill the asay without violating the lav first. So Rabbi Yochanan said you would get malchus on that. And over here it says in this case, in the Brisa, it says in such a case where Yisrael divorces a woman that he had to marry, that he must marry, he doesn't get malchus, even though he's over in a lav, because he could still be mekayim the asay. But the asay is not contingent on the lav. The asay was before the lav. Still, you don't get malchus. So it's a chakasha Rabbi Yochanan, and that's Rabbi Yochanan retracted from his halacha. So Ula is going to try to say, no, this is not actually a kasha, and we could still keep Rabbi Yochanan's original halacha of lav shekadome asay is loika. Omer Ula. Ula says no. Loye Omer, and I'm going to prove to you why. He's going to try to be miyashiv it in the following way. Loye Omer loisia leisha ba'oinus. Why does the Torah say loisia leisha ba'in oinus? The Torah didn't have to say it. Extra words. We know every letter in the Torah, right, is necessary. Here, these three words of loisia leisha l'chayr is not necessary. Why? Because the ligma moitzi shemra. You can learn that out from a moitzi shemra. What's a moitzi shemra? The case of moitzi shemra is somebody marries a woman, and he comes out and he says to the father, right? She was mazana. Once we were, I guess she was an arusa. She was mazana before we got married, between the kedushin and the nesuin. So the halach is over there also. If Adam come and prove the husband's claim wrong, then the halach is he can never divorce her. He has to marry her. He has to stay married to her kol yomav. So the Gemara says, once I know the halacha that a husband who falsely claimed that his wife was mazana tachtav, that he has to stay married to her, lo yuchel shachal kol yomav, I don't need the Torah to tell it to me by an oinus. Why? Because I can learn from a kal v'chaymer. Oma moitzi shemra. Shelo yasa maisa. Madr ba moitzi shemra. Where the guy didn't do an act of an aveira, right? Moitzi shemra is only a dibur. Right? He spread rumors. It's not a maisa. Omer Rachman is still the Torah punishes him and says, "V'loisi Elisha, you have to stay married to her." Oinus, a guy who actively violates a girl, loikoshikin avada, you should apply that halacha to an oinus, to the ma'anis, and say lo yuchel l'shalcha kol yomav, he has to stay married. Loma nemer. So why does it say that he has to marry her by an oinus? If I can learn from kal v'chaymer from Motzei Shemra, so the Gemara says, so if I don't need that asay to force him to marry the person, the girl who is ma'anis, Taneu inyan la'achrav, so then you have to apply it to a case where I wouldn't know it's from Motzei Shemra, which is Shem Girish Yachzer, that if he divorces her, the fact that he has to marry her to begin with, that I know from Motzei Shemra, it's a kal v'chaymer. The fact that if he divorces her, he has to remarry her, that is the loisia leisha of Oinus, and that's why it's a lav hanitik laseh, and you don't get malchus on it. That's Ula's teretz. So it could be that by an Oinus, it's completely different. Because in Oinus, I have extra words, L'Siyah L'Isha, to teach me for after Gerushin, that if you do divorce her, you should remarry her, and it makes it into a lav hanitik laseh, and it's not a kasha on Rabbi Yochanan on a case where it's lav shekadome aseh, where the lav and the aseh are independent of each other. There could be that you would get malchus. Asks the more about Kati, Oinus Motzei Shemra Legamar. Still, you can't learn because your whole reason is it's extra because I could learn from a kal v'chaymer. Oinus Motzei Shemra. Asks the Gemara, I still can't learn from Motzei Shemra. The ikla mifrach because there's a pircha on that kal v'chaymer. Mala Motzei Shemra. You know why the Torah is machmer by Motzei Shemra, that the guy has to marry her. You know why? Shekein loike meshalem, because we find that the Torah is also machmer by a Motzei Shemra that he gets malchus and he has to pay. He has to pay a fine. Right? So usually you're not like a mashalom, you only get one einish. But over here, by Motzei Shemra, it's unique. They get two einshim. So maybe only over there did the Torah say lo yisiyah leisha, because you find there are different chumras by Motzei Shemra you don't find anywhere else. But maybe by an oinus, where you don't find the concept, the idea of loike mashalom, maybe by an oinus you don't have to marry her, so you couldn't learn enough from a kal v'chaymer.
Isn't there something that you have to pay like the father, like shekel?
By Motzei Shemra.
No, by ones.
By an oinus loike u'mashalom.
That you have to pay.
You get malchus also. You get malchus and
Boishis Begam, I think he's talking about.
No,
right?
50
Busha for
50 shekel, right?
Right, for the Boishis Begam.
Can't we get his really breakfast anymore?
Anshu oisei meya kesef. You're saying that is by.
It's a fine. It's a knas. Yeah.
But you get both. The Gemara here seems to say you only get both by Motzei Shemra. You only get both by Motzei
If
Shemra.
he doesn't marry her, then he has to pay. But if he marries her,
If he marries her, he's got to
gotta
pay a
pay
lot
more,
more. He's got to
right?
pay a lot more than that. That's why they force him to marry her. That's a punishment.
Right, by Oinus you don't get malchus. you don't get malchus. You only get a knas, like you're saying. By oinus, there's only knas, not a malchus. But by motzi shemra, there's an extra word of v'yisru oisai. The Gemara Ksubas Darshan, v'yisru is also is malchus. So by motzi shemra, the Torah is machmer. You get both malchus and tashlumin, and the knas. So we get by malchus, you get their malchus and the knas. Maybe that's why the Torah is also machmer, that you have to marry her as well. You can never divorce her. So you can't learn a kal v'chomer from motzi shemra, which is only dibur. You have to marry her. So kal v'chomer oinus, where it's a maisa, you have to marry her. Because motzi shemra, you find the Torah gave separate chumras by motzi shemra that you don't find anywhere else. It's going to be only over there that the Torah say you have to marry her. So the Gemara says, you're right. It's a good pircha. So I can't learn oinus from motzi shemra. Ella, you could ask differently. Lo ye'omer lo yisiyah le'isha b'motzi shemra, v'ligmer me oinus. So here we're going like this. Mamish, like it's a whole roundabout way the Gemara is about to tell us. Lo yisiyah le'isha. Don't say loisi leisha from motzi shemra, and let's learn loisi leisha from motzi shemra from oinus. What would be the kavachaymer? A ma oinus she'einu loika meshalim. Ma dechan oinus. The guy only pays a fine, but he doesn't get malchus. You don't get both. Still rachmana v'loisi leisha. Still the Torah says you got to marry her. Motzi shemra. By a motzi shemra, where the Torah's machmer, you get malchus and you pay a fine. Loi kolshkin. Isn't it a kavachaymer that you have to marry her? The Torah doesn't have to tell me by motzi shemra that you have to marry her, because by oinus I already know you have to marry her. By an oinus you don't get malchus, you only get a knas. So kavachayim b'motzi shemra, you get malchus and a knas that you have to marry her. So why don't you need a b'motzi shemra? So lama namar. So why don't you need leisha b'motzi shemra? Im ein l'motzi shemra t'nai ein l'oinus. So if it's extra b'motzi shemra, I'll apply that. This is a main Indian, right? This is a very difficult concept. You know, people have struggled with this. You know, ever since I was in yeshiva, like I remember, like it was because you have extra words over here, so all of a sudden we'll take it and we'll cut it out and we'll paste it somewhere else. This is the way an Indian works. So if you have extra words by motzi shemra, because I don't need the halacha of a loisia leisha by motzi shemra. Why not? I don't need the Torah to tell me that you have to marry motzi shemra, because I can learn from kavachayim from oinus. Because oinus is not like a meshalim, and still the Torah says marry her. So kavachayim motzi shemra, where it's like a meshalim, certainly you would have to marry her. So I don't need the loisi leisha motzi shemra. So the Gemara is going to say, in Eina Inyan, if I don't need a motzi shemra, right, then l'met shemra t'nei inyan lo'inus. So we'll almost cut it out and paste it to an oinus. Then Eina Inyan lo'fanav, and I don't need it for before you divorce her, right? Because if it already says loisi leisha right away after you violate her, you have to marry her. T'nei inyan la'achrav. Then you say, we'll paste it to where? To when you divorce her, you say loisi leisha. Now it makes it into a lav and into class A, and that's why we don't get malchus. So it's like a very interesting limud, the Gemara wants to say. So again, the point of Ula is, we're trying to tell you, we're trying to understand why when you divorce, a Yisrael who divorces a girl who is a ma'anis, he doesn't get malchus, even though he violated a lav of l'yuchal shachal kayom, you're not allowed to divorce her. So why doesn't he get malchus? Teretz is because we're finding an asay after the lav that you can still repair the lav with. Where do you get that asay from? So Gemara wants to make a very creative chap. You don't need the asay b'motzi shemra because you learn from oinus. So just cut it out from over there and apply it to oinus, and you don't need it for before the gerushin because it already says it there. So you put it after the gerushin, and that makes it into a lav and into class A. Very interesting way. Okay, says the Gemara, no, not a good kavachaymer either, because you can't learn mitzvah shemra from oinus. It all starts with that kavachaymer, right? To make it extra b'mitzvah shemra, because you have a kavachaymer from oinus. Gemara says mitzvah shemra oinus lami loy gomer. They call it mifrach, because there's a pirch on that. Ma lo oinus shekein osa ma'isa. Maybe you're right that there's no loike mashalim by an oinus, but there's an other chumrah by an oinus that maybe that's why the Torah is makpid. You should marry her, because by an oinus he did a maisa aveira. So there the Torah was machmer and said, you did such an act, you have to marry her. Maybe it's only dvarim, it's only words. Maybe the Torah wasn't makpid for you to have to marry a woman that you, I guess, spread false rumors about. And you can't learn a kavachaymer from oinus. Elos, the Gemara says, oh, you're right, that's also a good percha. So I have another creative way. Why do you have to say lo yisiyah leisha? The words are extra, because look at the case. The case of Mitzvah Shemra is he's already married to her. So why does the Torah say lo yisiyah leisha? You're already married. The case of a Mitzvah Shemra is you spread false rumors about who? About your wife. So then why would the Torah add the words once the guy's proven wrong? Adam say it's a false claim. Lo yisiyah leisha. She has to be your wife. We're talking about his wife. right? He spread false rumors about his wife. So the words Leisi Isha without any kal v'chaimer is extra, because the case is it's his wife. So lo yomer Leisi Isha Moitzi Shemer Shei Ishta, it's already his wife. V'loma nemar, why does it say it? So now, so you don't have to come out to kal v'chaimer because the kal v'chaimer is a period. The period on the kal v'chaimer. So you just from the context itself, from the case itself, it's extra. So what is it? So why does it say it anyway? So you begin. You do that same shtickle Torah. You cut it from Moitzi Shemer and you paste it to Einis to after divorce, and it makes it into a lav and a tiklasei. Ve'ema asks the Gemara. How do you know to cut it out of the whole parsha of Moitzi Shemer and apply it to Einis? Keep the Loisi Isha in the parsha itself. You might not need it for before the gerushin, before he divorces her, right? Because before he divorces her, he's still his wife. So why does he Loisi Isha? Keep it there. Keep it in that sugya of Moitzi Shemer, the parsha of Moitzi Shemer, and just put it after gerushin. Just say after, if he divorces her, it says lo yuchel shalcha, can never divorce her. And if he does, then Loisi Isha, then it will make it a lav class say Moitzi Shemer to say the loy lucky that he doesn't get malchus. Says the Gemara Enechanami. You're right. Do that. Ve'osi oynes v'gomer minei, and then you could learn oynes from Moitzi Shemer. So okay, so I need a. Everybody's still with me. I'm not sure if the oilam is. Yeah, it's a little confusing outside. It's not anymore chelik. You know, we stopped with Sanhedrin the last parak, and yeah, it was all fun and games and stories. But here we're getting back to the meat and potatoes of Shas. So here, well, again, just outside a quick recap, very easy. It's like, you know, it gets technical and complicated if we have to go through every step inside and speak it out. But the Gemara is saying that at the end of the day, somebody who's ma'anas a woman, right? You have to marry her. If you divorce her, you're violating a lav. It says lo yuchel shalcha. Do you get malchus on that lav? Yes or no?
Only if you're a kohen.
If you're a kohen, you for sure get malchus. You can never repair that lav.
Yisrael.
If you're Yisrael, the Brisa says you could remarry her. You don't get malchus.
So
You can remarry her.
period do you have to remarry her until you get malchus?
So we'll talk about that. But first the etzem concept. You do not get a Yisrael who divorces a girl that the Torah says you must marry and you can never divorce. The halacha is, the Brisa says you don't get malchus. Gemara Kasha.
He refuses to divorce her.
No, he has to stay married.
If he refuses to remarry her.
Okay, so we'll talk about it in a moment. Gemara's going to talk about that. But for right now, he could remarry her, and he plans on remarrying her, let's just say, for this conversation. The halacha is, the Brisa says, again, a girl, you're ma'anis. Torah says, marry her, never divorce her. He divorces her. The halacha is, you do not get malchus on that lav of lo yuchel shalcha kol yamav. Why not? Why not? You violated a lav. Every lav gets malchus. Why didn't you get malchus? The teretz is, you don't get malchus on that lav because why? Because you could remarry her. There's an asay that you could remarry her. Now the Gemara is struggling. Where is that asay that you could remarry her? It doesn't say you could remarry her.
Take the words from the other pasuk with the onis, the kal v'chaimer.
The Gemara, because it doesn't say usually, right, like gzela. Don't steal. If you steal, the Eish was like Zayla. It says the Asay after the Lav. Okay, you could repair the Lav. Here it doesn't say anywhere you could repair the Lav if you divorce her. Where do you get that Asay from? That's the Gemara struggling with. And the Gemara comes out, you know where you get it from? You get it from Moitzi Shemer. Because by Moitzi Shemer, also you're not allowed to divorce her. And over there it says, if you divorce her, somehow we cut and pasted in that parsha over there that you could remarry her and therefore you could repair the lav so you don't get malchus. So here at this stage of the Gemara is saying, we learn oinus from Moitzi Shemer. Just like by Moitzi Shemer, if you spread false rumors, the Torah says that you have to stay married to her, you could never divorce her. And still, if you divorce her, it says, loisi isha, which means you could remarry her and you could be misakin that lav. So gomar oinus, from Moitzi Shemer, we learn Oinus Moitzi Shemer, that also by Oinus, even though it doesn't say the Asay Mefurish, you could remarry, you don't get Malchus if you divorce her.
How can onis be a kal v'chaimer?
So now the Gemara is going to ask, how do you learn it? How do you learn? There has to be some mechanism, right? There's Yud Gimel Midah Shator and the Resh is bad. How do you learn Oinus from Moitzi Shemer? Ask them about my Gomer Minei. What's your technique? What mechanism are you using to learn Oinus from Moitzi Shemer? How are you learning one from the other? If you have a kal v'chaimer, or it's a mamatzinu, ikal mifrach. I have a pircha. Whatever you're going to say, I'm going to ask you a question on. Why? Because malam moitzi shemra, shekain lo yasa maisa. Maybe only by moitzi shemra could you remarry her and repair the lav of lo yuchal shachal kayamav, because there you didn't do a maisa. The Torah took it easy on you. You just used words. You didn't do a maisa aveira. You didn't do an act of an aveira. So only over there by moitzi shemra, where all you did was you used words. That was your aveira. It was just words, right? Isn't there a saying, sticks and stones?
Break my bones.
I can't break my bones, but words can never harm me. Sticks and stones can break my bones. But
They say it cynically, or when they say that they mean.
This is a very old Goyish saying.
No, but what does it mean? It means that
Tough guy.
tough guy. In other words,
Me with words.
No.
can't harm me.
Don't be offended.
Is that what it means?
Yeah, exactly.
If you're getting bullied.
Unlike Lashon Hara, that Lashon Hara we know is a law, right?
Okay.
So that's a Goyish concept, as opposed to we have a concept of Lashon Hara. He is chayv alav.
Words are very powerful.
He can get malchus even with using his mouth. So that's the way the Goyim thinks, but that's not the way we think. Okay, because they say sticks and stones can hurt my bones, but words can never hurt me.
But they mean it literally. I always thought that words are more hurtful than sticks and stones.
It's a Goyish
It's
thing.
it's a good thing. But
It's like
okay.
turning your cheek, Mahavil.
Uh-huh.
You turn your cheek. That's
Okay, words are just
totally
words.
The Goyish, it's a totally Goyish
Right.
concept.
Right.
It's like I'm rubber, you're glue. Whatever you throw at me bounces off me and sticks to you.
Ooh, that's good. It's like kasher zomam. That we needed that saying like in the beginning of the Masechta. It's very good.
How can Motzi Shemra be an honest?
Motzi and Onis are two separate cases. Motzi Shemra is the guy a guy intentionally spread false rumors about his wife, and saying that she was Mizana. Onis is somebody who takes a girl wasn't even his wife and just violates her and is Mizana with her, and now the Torah says you have to marry her. So the Gemara says, how are you learning? How are you learning that an Onis can repair the lav if he ends up divorcing her? He can repair it by remarrying her. You're learning it from Motzi Shemra. Gemara says you can't learn from Motzi Shemra. You know why? Because if you find that the Torah said you could remarry the wife after divorcing her by Motzi Shemra, and you don't get Malchus on it because you repaired it, that's only over there Motzi Shemra because you didn't do a Maisa. That was just words. Words will never... it hurts, but not as much as sticks and stones, I guess. So you can't learn Oinus on Motzi Shemra. Oinus is worse. Maybe by Oinus, you don't have that luxury. You can't learn from Oinus on Motzi Shemra, because Motzi Shemra is just words, so that's what the Torah says. Okay, if you divorce her, we'll let you remarry her, you're not going to get Malchus on it. Because the whole crime was a lot less. It wasn't such a crime just to spread rumors, even though it's a tremendous crime, but relative to an Oinus, to an act, that then it's... there you go. Mamash Hazai. It's lav she'ein b'maisa versus lav she'yesh b'maisa. That's right. Motzi Shemra is called the lav she'ein b'maisa. Ela Amar Rava. So Rava says, again, we're trying to understand why by an oinus that was megarish, right, he can remarry her without getting malchus. So Ela Amar Rava, you know why? Because kol yomav ba'amoid v'hachzer. You don't need to come out to Motzi Shemra. Forget Motzi Shemra. The reason why by an oinus, if you end up divorcing her, the halach is you don't get malchus on that lav, even though you violated la'yuchal shalcha, because it says the extra words kol yomav. You can never ever send her away your entire life, all of your days. You can never get rid of her. So what does kol yomav mean? What does it mean kol yomav? Why is the Torah adding kol yomav? Lo yuchal shalcha kol yomav. It means kol yomav b'amoid v'achzer. The Torah is giving you a specific command that even if you divorce her, kol yomav, all of your days, you should go and try at least to remarry her. Make sure to be mesaken that lav, and that's why you don't get malchus on that. V'chinki asu Ravin, Omer Reb Yochanan, he himself said it, kol yomav ba'amoid v'achzer. All your days, you should work on trying to remarry her. Okay, so that's that. So now we know. Okay, so like we jumped through hoops trying to figure out, right? And a guy who was ma'anas. That's so funny. I keep looking at that clock over there, as the shiur goes on, and I'm seeing it's
That's
it's
you got plenty of time.
8:47. I'm like, wow, this is Pesach. Is time going slower now because I'm not at the bar, or I'm not at the barbecue, eating as I was the program. We're just eating the whole time. Like, wow, time really goes slow. No, it's 9:23 right now. We have only 5 to 7 minutes left. But point is, we're jumping through hoops trying to figure out, how do I know that a guy who was ma'ana somebody else has a command, the Torah's mitzvah, to marry her and never divorce her? How do I know if he divorces her, he doesn't get malchus because he could remarry her? So we're jumping through hoops trying to figure out from Matzi Shemra, Kavachomer, Mamatzinu, back and forth, cut and paste, and in the end, it's 2 words the Gemara darshans. Lo yuchal shalcha, kol yomav. Extra 2 words, kol yomav ba'amoid v'achzer koi. That if you divorce her, there's an extra 2 words of kol yomav. All of your days, make sure that you remarry her if you divorce her. The Torah says kol yomav, extra 2 words. Oh, now the Gemara is going to ask a different question. We're going back to the words of Rabbi Yochanan, the original words of Rabbi Yochanan. Halacha Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan came along and said, a lav, which is preceded by an aseh, you get malchus on. How could you say that you get malchus on a lav that is preceded by an aseh? It's not similar to lav of chasima. What is lav of chasima? There's a lav in the Torah, which you learn from that lav all the parameters, all the halachas of every other lav in the Torah. It's like the central lav, the foundational lav, which is called lav de chasima, which is lesach saim shiur b'dishay. That when you ply with your ox, you're not allowed to muzzle it, and you have to allow it to eat. Right? So lesach saim shiur b'dishay. Over there, all lavim, in order to get malchus on a lav, it has to be similar to that lav in many ways. So what are one of the ways that lav de chasima, that it's not similar to lav de chasima? It's not similar because lav de chasima doesn't have an asay preceding it. So how could you say that any lav that has an asay attached to it in the beginning gets malchus? It's not similar to the lav de chasima. Where says no, that's not a similarity that's so important, because just because you have an asay yisera, that should be worse than a lav de chasima. It's still similar to lav de chasima. The etzem lav is similar to lav de chasima. Where it says yochi, if that's true, lav shenitik lasei nami, even if the asay is after the lav, why don't you get malchus? We know lav shenitik lasei doesn't get malchus. Leimim shendukas bechmar asay yiseira migragara, say the same svara. What do you mean? The lav is the same. Just because it has an asay afterwards should be any worse and you shouldn't get malchus? Amalei, no, that's different. Ahulin atuke lav with the asa. That is coming to detach it from the lav. It's coming to detach from the lav. It's coming to correct, to repair it. So when the asay is contingent on the lav, again, the classic example would be gezel, gzela, right? Yeah, you steal, and then the Torah says v'heshav gzela. So as long as the asay can repair the lav, and you cannot do the asay without first violating the lav, then you don't get malchus on it. That's called lavanitik lasay. That's why the Torah is giving you the asay. The purpose of the asay is to repair the lav, so you won't get malchus on it. But a asay that could be fulfilled without violating the lav first, it's independent. It's not contingent on the lav. There, it wouldn't affect the lav at all, and you'd still get malchus on that lav, and that's why Rabbi Yochanan said what he said. Okay, so now, I think you asked, Shmuley, you asked, what happens if he never remarries her? Right? So the case of the guy who is ma'anis, and he divorces her, so the Torah says, Kol yoma v'amoid v'achzer, you have to remarry her all of your days. The Gemara says, I understand this if you say that a person doesn't get malchus whenever you have an asay attached to it, or you could still fulfill or repair the lav. That's only if you're mavatal the asay b'yadayim. You can never be mekayim the asay. So as long as you're not mavatal the asay b'yadayim, you're potter from malchus, because potentially you could still remarry her. So you were asking before, does he have to? What if he doesn't remarry her? What if he doesn't remarry her? So like he lives out his life, he never remarries her. What's the halacha? Does he get malchus? Says machloikas. So there's one Mandamer who says you never get Malkus. Even if you don't actually end up remarrying her, you don't get Malkus. Why don't you get Malkus? Because you could. It's possible. It's possible to remarry her. So as long as the possibility exists, then you don't get Malkus. That's bitloi v'loi bitloi. Depends if you're mavatal. If you're mavatal, then you would get Malkus. But as long as you're mavatal the asay biyadayim, what would be a case of, let's say, being mavatal the asay biyadayim?
We're going to say shiur hakan. You killed the mother bird.
If you kill the mother bird.
Right. If you kill it.
If you kill it.
She dies.
If she dies.
It's not be dying.
You didn't do it.
Yeah, that's not, you weren't mavatal
On the
it.
next stuff. It's on the next
Right, so on the next daf. Okay.
Yeah,
Rocky's already enough at the Zara.
If you kill the-
Yeah, he's really ahead. Yeah, okay, yeah.
That's what it's going to bring.
That's good. So you kill the mother bird.
If you kill the mother, you make it impossible to be Mekayim the mitzvah.
You killed the mother, so you did it.
Right, exactly.
What would be the case over here where you, what were you going to ask? Were you say something?
I was thinking about in the matzav of Gezela, where you always have the possibility to return the object your
Right.
entire life. You know that.
Yeah.
Why do you get Makkos? You know, why would you get Makkos either?
You wouldn't.
Well, if
You wouldn't.
if
That's
he
right.
returns
You
it,
wouldn't.
Then, like, let's say if he doesn't return it and they catch him, he has to be kefil. But if he
No, but you can be in the status of like, I'm going to return it for my entire life.
Right, according to this man, the Omar, right. In other words, you're saying a guy who wants to be smart and like steal and not get Malkus.
No, it's a real question. I'm not trying to be it.
Why, you stole? I'm just kidding.
No,
Now, there is a statute of limitations. Because we have that in the beginning of the Sefta, we talked about the difference between 10 years if he...
There is a statute. I'm not aware of that. Is there, Rocky, there's a statute of limitations on this? Like,
The 10-year loan, and you're talking about the Shemitah. That's not canceled by Shemitah. That is, yeah.
The most from 30 days to 10 years,
yeah.
he has to pay the difference that a person would be willing to take such a loan.
Right.
So there is some onus on the person who makes such a demand on the other person by stretching the time period.
Right.
So the time period also has a dollar and cent value.
Right. There you see, it does have a dollar and cent. Yeah.
So there must
Yeah.
be some parallel idea over here.
With money.
You
can't just hold on to somebody's money forever, like he's asking. Yeah.
You hold him, you hold
Right.
him like a prisoner.
Right. So that's the other man. The other man was the man kima v'lekimoi. The other man says no. You got to fulfill it. If you don't fulfill it right away, you do get malchus on it. Right? Depends if you fulfill it. And the other man is machlokes over here. Berchen and Shlokish. The Gemara is going to say whether you have to fulfill it right away, and if you don't fulfill it right away, you get malchus, or as long as you have the potential to fulfill it, even if you don't fulfill it right now, but as long as you still can, as long as you weren't mevatel biyadayim, then you don't get malchus. By the way, the case of being mevatel the asay biyadayim by a woman who you divorced and you weren't supposed to divorce her, they say would be where you're madir hano. You made a neder that you can never be matir. You said, I'm never going to remarry her. So there you went biyadayim, so to speak, and you're mevatel the asay of marrying her, of kol yamav. That would be a case of malchus in such a case. So
How could your neder trump the bar mitzvah though?
you're saying
This is a big sugya, but if you...
shavua. No,
It's a shemra also.
you can't make a shavua against your mushbava oimed marsinai. So ain't shavua chal al shavua. There's a concept of ain't shavua chal shavua, and when you're making a shavua on top of a shavua, mushbava oimed marsinai on top of a mitzvah, you're mushbava ready to do from Har Sinai. A neder you could. I believe a neder you could, even though, because it's your own personal, it's a neder. It's a neder. You're answering it on yourself. You're asking yourself, if you're answering, okay, it's big sugi over here. If you ask, the fundamental difference in neder and the shavua is you're answering the gavra and the neder is in the chefza. That's the fundamental difference. So when you have, when you're mushbava oimed marsina, you have a chiyuv on you from Har Sinai to do a mitzvah, and you make a shuvah, I'm not going to do it, it's not chal. Because in Shavua Chal Shavua, you're already mushbav oimed. There's a Shavua prior to your Shavua that says you have to do the mitzvah. But by a neder, it's not on you. It's like you're answering. You're saying, I'm not going to benefit from that chayfetz over there. There's nothing, that blocks you from that other than what's on karkafta the gaver, but not on the chayfetz. So the mechanics are different. That's why you could actually do it. And if you do it, you'll be mavatal a mitzvah say that you have laying and resting on you, because you just answered something else by way of neder. So that would be a case of bitla v'la bitla. What were you saying, doctor? I'm sorry?
By neder, you could be made for a neder, you could be matra.
Right, so here we're talking about a neder she'en lo hatara. I guess he did it in such a way, it's possible where he doesn't want Hatara. So here we're saying, Hanicha l'manda bitla v'bitla. So kol yoma b'moed v'achzer makes sense. Every single day, there's a mitzvah on you to marry her, right? Who would that be true according to? According to the Manda Omer that says, as long as you have the potential to remarry her, you don't get Malkus. Because that's all you need. You need the possibility of remarrying her to save you from Malkus. El Manda Omer Kima V'Lekimo, Michael Meimer, what are you going to say? According to the Manda Omer, it says Kima V'Lekimo. Kima V'Lekimo means, if you don't fulfill it now, you get Malkus. You don't wait. It's not just a possibility. You got to be able to fulfill it right away. So Michael Meimer, how are you going to darshan Kol Yomov? Gemara answers, Midu time Rabbi Yochanan. This is an answer to Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan Tana Tani Bitle Chai V'Lo Bitle Potter. This is according to Rabbi Yochanan. So according to Rabbi Yochanan, it all works out. Okay, we'll stop over here. Okay, Shikaya.